Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all Thursday morning. Can you all hear me? Thumbs up if you can. Yeah, great. Thank you, Bernadette. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And it's really a delight for me to see all those people doing different things to get joy in their lives. Lisa, granddaughters, grand joys. That's really I'd never heard of that before. That's great. Grand joys. Kristen, sounds of wave. Christina, dogs. Lisola, reading. Renee, my family. Melissa Hughes, it's good to see you. Melissa, haven't seen you in a while. Going on a long run. Amber, being in nature. Nicole, taking my dogs for a walk. Conversations with my sibling is Janet. Crystal, teaching. Learning adds joy to my life, Leslie. Same thing for me. Relaxing with a glass of wine and a pretty view, Patty. That's great. Family and fishing. Brian, going back to real life and teaching. And hopefully that'll happen soon for us. Exercise, golf, Christopher's golf, and all of those. It's nice to see that we're still finding time for joy in our life, despite of what we all facing at this point. So if you're just joining us, would you please rename yourself with the grade level in the district, and in the chat box share one thing that adds joy, and we will move on with our presentation. We are three of us here, my two partners. Annie, are you here?
I am changing my screen name right now.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Annie is my partner, and Kirk is also my partner. He'll be working the back channel, Kirk. Perfect. So Annie will be giving us ELA, ELD perspective. Kirk will be giving us science perspective. I will be adding math. But even if you don't teach any of those three areas, you will still walk away with ideas that you can use, whether you teach music or home ec or any other subject. Some of the ideas are very generic ideas. So we will get started with our presentation. Just so you know that we are going to be recording the session so we can make it available for other people. Zoom norms, if you attended session 1, 2, and 3, they are the same. Make sure there's a mute button. Some of us who might not have used Zoom as much, and use the chat for questions and comments, raising hand. If you have a question during breakout, you could use that here or there. This is, as you can see, this is the 4th module in a series of 5. I'd like us to ponder on what you just saw here. We will come back to this quotation towards the end, and hopefully we will find some ways to meet where the learners are. Equity norms, these are the similar norms that you probably attended the other sessions that make sure you engage as a learner. It helps if you can just come on the camera that way, especially during the breakout sessions. We are going to have 2 breakout sessions. It would be nice for us to add your perspective. So please fully engage for the next hour and a half. And during breakout especially, is important that, because the groups are smaller, to add your ideas to it. And we will have 2 breakout sessions, 9 minutes each during our hour and a half presentation. So what we want to ask you is, what's the first thing that pops in your head when you think of unfinished learning or learning? This is very spontaneous. If you could just share that in the chat box, please. Students not understanding. Summer camp, catching up. worry, missed opportunity, frustration, confused students, gaps in learning, not mastering skills, reteaching, missing skills, learning gaps, students struggling, reading struggling, missing links and reteaching, material skills and process, not making, oh, this is coming so fast, it's hard for me to keep up. Missing learning, tons of missing learning, teaching material, reteaching material, being lost and no one being able to help in person. So those are all real concerns that we have moving into our teaching. Isolation, not focusing, lack of motivation and guidance, obviously disengagement, not understanding concepts and meeting standards, not being able to move forward, giving up, dropping out. Yeah, those are real issues for our students. Not engaged. So hopefully as you are thinking of that question, absences, because when kids are disengaged, they do not want to come for learning sessions. So inequitable, that's really a big one. Inequitably across various aspects of coming school year. Losing students in a generic state learning, language. Yes, all of those are real issues. So hopefully we are going to be sharing some things with you that might alleviate some of those stresses that we have going into these sessions. So we do have two goals, principles of unfinished learning, and we will be sharing some strategies, and you'll be sharing those strategies with each other as well during the breakout sessions. These are the three questions we would like you to ponder on before we dive into the 6 principles. Take a moment. Okay, so be thinking of those questions as we dive into the 7 principles. So the 6 principles that we are going to be sharing with you. So just glance at those and we will move through each one of them. We will have a breakout session after after going over the first 3, and then another breakout session after going over the next 3. Alrighty, so let's just move to stick to grade level content. What we do need to do is, what we do not need to do at this point is to actually, given the amount of time and loss, what we do not want to do is, we will have the temptation to test them as soon as they come back. And that is not something we want to do as soon as they come back. Because our temptation would be to find the deficits and try to remediate them. And that we all know that's largely ineffective, even in a non-COVID setting. That has been counterproductive and creates more inequities and in giving access to kids for their grade level. So what we do want to do instead is engage them with the current grade level, pull out their prior knowledge, and go back to whatever they need, like backfill or just fill the gaps as they come up. And we're going to be sharing a few routines with you. They're high yield routines like number talks, science talk, data talk, picture talks. So there are a lot of conversations. So as you go back, instead of testing, as we are having conversations in the context of the content with our students, those conversations will reveal to us the gaps that are there, so that we can start planning accordingly, whatever we see. So we do want, like I said, we do want to focus on grade level, and we want to address everything within the context of grade level standards. Just like an example, and Annie would probably attest to this, is that when a child stumbles upon a word, we do not resort to less demanding and simplified tasks. We ask the child to figure out the word in the context of whatever they're reading. So it's the same analogy that we do. In mathematics too, we evaluate their understanding together, and we use some of the routines that we will be sharing with you in just a sec. One of the routines that we do is number talks. Raise your hand if you have done number talks, just to get an idea. Oh, okay, whoa, quite a few people have done number talks. That's wonderful. That is, oh wow, 4, 5, 6 people raised their hands. So 6 of us have done number talks. For those of us who haven't done, we will be doing one. Just to give you an idea, we will have all of these strategies and all during our subsequent professional learning. But for now, we are just going to focus on this one here. So if you would, let me give you a little bit context. So in 6th grade, students need to know division of fraction. Division of a fraction by a fraction. Let's say if you have a child in 6th grade and they don't have solid understanding of any operations or even meaning of fractions or even equivalency of fractions. And then you're thinking, how am I going to build their understanding with division of a fraction by a fraction when they don't have all this prior, or they have tons of gaps in their prior learning? So how do we build that understanding? So what I'm going to have us engage in, so think of how many apples do you see and how do you see them? And put that in your chat box, please. And then I'll just model just briefly how we can address it. Gurleen is sharing, oh, wow, it disappeared. Teresa, hey Teresa, good to see you. I was happy to see your name here. Teresa, 7.5 is the total. And Gurleen, I think earlier said it's 2.5 plus 2.5 plus 2.5. And we also see, oh, I'm also seeing Stephanie is sharing with us. And if this was a real class, you would obviously talk to the kids directly. So with the number that we have, we just decided to just do it differently, just one person. So that is made up of 6 plus 5/10 plus 5/10 plus 5/10. So we can see it's decimals, 3 groups, and you can all see everyone's responses. What I do want to say is there's one of those food channels that we don't have time here. I would write everybody's names. So these are some of the previous one. I'm just going to go to the next one, next page on Jamboard. So this is something that we would, just an example of, this is like cooked food. You know, you have the prep and all of a sudden you see the things that are possible the outcome of these number talks where you put kids' names there. This was done by Kevin. These are done by students, by the way, so different ways. Samina said 3 copies of 2.5. Julie said 9 minus 1.5. How many 2.5s are in 7? Chantal looked at 2.5s. So some of the responses came from asking them the question. So you could see Sumina's, whichever way she did, 3 copies of 2.5. And she multiplied. And so she is the author of distributive property now. She's thinking like a mathematician. So everybody's thinking like a mathematician here. Kevin had 2.5, 2.5, broke it down. So you can see how different learners are saying different things on this, and their names are on there, and that gives them the agency of the work. Miguel went ahead and Miguel said 7.5 is 15 halves. It's the same thing as 34ths. It's the same thing as 68ths, so on and so forth. And the same thing written notationally. And so through teachers' questioning, we would say, how many friends do I have if I were to give half of an apple to each one of my friends? So Kwan wrote that question, that how many friends can I give it to? Oh, wow, just like we said, 6 divided by 2 means that how many halves are in 7.5? So all of a sudden, the story is connected to division of a fraction by a fraction. So we can see how the learning towards the last, this is where the last part is where we wanted the students to get to. And so just within one setting, we could review all of the prior learning with the addition, with multiplication, with subtraction, with obviously division. Then we could build off of what Chantal has said, and then connect Javante's from Samina's is with division of property with distributive property is done just with one with addition, one subtraction. So those are some of the, an example of a number talk for those of us that who haven't done number talk. So this is just a quick iteration of a number talks. We call it number talk, or we call it math talk. If you're teaching science, it would be a science talk. So, and moving on to our presentation. So here, just a sec. Okay, so you can see how we can address the gaps in that context here. So digging up their prior knowledge and connecting it to the grade level. And science and ELA, ELD, Annie will give us an example how we could reach the learners at the grade level. And Kirk will share with us science example. Go ahead, Annie.
Okay, so as we talk about deepen our student understanding, it's not just to do the routine, but one of the things that we are talking about in ELA, ELD is an activity where we call Noodle. And so we always talk about picture worth 1,000 words. So with Noodle, we are combining, we coin the term, so we are combining notes plus doodle. So if the kids are reading a passage, a story, a text, and as you are reading it with them, you pull out the key information, and then you kind of doodle it, and then also put in the academic language in there. And that way, it's not, the kids are not so overwhelmed with a lot of words, but they have picture. And then after that, then you have them retell or summarize what it is. And so it's a good way to deepen their understanding and to help them with developing academic language. The other one that we have been working a lot with in the last 7 years is the deconstruction of the text in meaningful chunks. Because a lot of time, as we are teaching only vocabulary, and vocabulary, you know, in English, we have a lot of multiple meaning words. So if we are just take a one word and teach it, then when it go to the context of the text that we are reading, it doesn't make sense to them. So I just give a really quick example of even the verb zip, Z-I-P. So when you hear zip, you know to close. But then when you hear zip up or zip down, zip over, zip around, zip in, zip out, all of those combining with the preposition give us a different connotation of the word zip. So that is why, and it's just a symbol example I want to give you. But as we look into text, we gotta chunk it sometime. And even when we are teaching verb, when you say, I have completed, if we take each verb, then the verb have doesn't give us meaning, but completed gives us meaning. So it's just a little things like that. Even though, like I said, I says it little, but for kids, if they don't fully understand the whole phrase, it just doesn't give them the full understanding. And then when they talk, when they write, it's not carry.
And in science, one of the things that the NGSS is really all about is really making sense of phenomenon and seeing something and then asking the students to notice and wonder before you start blazing into explaining things to kids. I often think that we get so bogged down in procedural things in science that it turns a lot of kids off. So, making sure that they're noticing and wondering about, could be something in nature, go outside, could be something in their backyard, within distance learning. And then all the things that Annie just mentioned certainly apply. All those techniques are wonderful in science. And so one of the things we like everyone to think about is that, science is a great vehicle to do a lot of different things. And you can use that and bring that into a lot of your courses and really kind of hit two birds with one stone and support the learning that's happening across the board in all that we do. We have a great opportunity here to kind of think about scientific literacy across the curriculum. And with the COVID, there's certainly a big drive for that. And that's something that would engage kids and really let them speak and engage with one another and help build that social emotional connection too that they're all worried about right now. And as we start the new school year, that's really critical to begin. How do we build those really good relationships with kids? And that this is a wonderful opportunity to do that. So one of the normal routines in science is modeling. And so when you ask the kids, what do you notice and what do you wonder? They can start explaining what those models are. So read, write, listen, and speak are certainly a really key component of science instruction.
And then modeling also comes in, as we know, modeling provides a real life context for the students and that engages them. That engagement is really important. And these routines of everything that Annie has talked about and Kirk has talked about, notice and wonder, it engages the learners with each other. And that is really the 21st century pedagogy that we are trying to shift here, is that it's not the teacher who's the giver of the knowledge. Kids are co-creating the knowledge, just like we did that in Number Talk here with Apple, that they're co-creating this learning. So they're leaning into each other's ways of seeing, leaning into each other's intuitive ways of doing things. And so when kids lean into each other's perspectives and thinking, there's a potential for learning to massively accelerate. So this is where, because all of a sudden they're building upon each other's thinking, it gives them the rigor and the depth and the understanding because it's the real life context. So rigor and depth is important for them to access anything in life, basically. So that is our first principle, is to stick with the grade level content in a meaningful way with routines such as notice, wonder, which one doesn't belong. We will be sharing that in a while too. There are some other routines that we'll be sharing in a minute. So we do want to focus on depth and not the pace. And we do want to avoid the temptation to rush over and cover all the gaps in learning from last year. And that certainly is going to leave our kids abandoned, and it is going to leave our kids discouraged. And it's more like feeding them the curriculum junk food So when we do that, it's going to create shallow engagement of the learners with the kids. It's going to create low understanding. It is low cognitive demand, and kids will acquire bad habits of learning. So what we need more than anything else at this point is to actually focus on their social, Kirk mentioned, social emotional well-being. And their agency. And so we want to engage in the routines that are going to give them that agency and empowerment, just like notice and wonder. What do you notice? What do you wonder? And everybody's leaning into each other's ways of seeing. And then we engage them, more we engage them, better off they are. So we need to remain focused. What is happening today? And one way of doing that is to provide rich, authentic tasks in addition to the routines that we are talking about. So our typical tasks, I'm not saying that it happens every classroom, but in mathematics, sometimes we give 20 problems on one worksheet, or this could be happening in any areas. So instead of 20 problems, I'm going to give you a couple of math examples that are easy to do for you tomorrow when you teach it. So we can give them a task. Instead of 20 problems, you say, write 10 different addition equations that have the sum of 100. That could be K2. Elementary K3-5 could be a sum of 7.5, sum of 7.5, sum of 8.5, 8.25. So you can make it anything. There's infinite ways of doing it. Can you write 10 equations that give us a difference of 20 or a difference of 4.5? Can you give us a product, 10 equations that give us a product of 24 or 5.5? Quotient of 1. You can see how, but just by changing one thing, the kids are given these choices, and it also becomes low floor, high ceiling task because kids can access it at their level. If I say sum of 100, a kid could go 99 plus 1. Another kid could go 49 plus 51. Another kid could go 40.5 plus 51.5 or whatever that is. So they could do fractional. So it really provides this wide range where kids can access and they can learn from each other as they share. And another example of going deeper would be give 2 problems only and ask them to solve it 3 different ways. And we do want to do more number talks, science talks, notice and wonder. By the way, those WODB is which one doesn't belong. That's another version of number talk, or it could even be science talk, data talk. The idea is for kids to talk about it uninhibited. They just share their perspective. Typically, in math especially, they feel like, oh, teacher has to teach me and I regurgitate. And so those are the long gone days. We no longer engage in that type of learning. We have kids make sense of this. And in that process, they dig deeper into the content, and that helps them complete their unfinished learning more so than any of the traditional methods that we typically use. So in language arts also, Annie has some additional examples that she's going to share with us.
So it's just like the other, my principle number 1 is about focus on the grade level content and rigor. This one we go in depth, not pace. So when you think about it, if you have 3 stories to read with the time that we have, I'd rather spend time on one story, but go in depth with one story. So after we finish with comprehension, then we can go on and analyze how the author write the sentences. That's where you can teach your grammatical skills right in the same text so that the student can have a deeper understanding. And like I said earlier, once we analyze how the author created text, look at all the author's craft in terms of applying the grammatical feature and things like that, then you get kids to deeper understand, dig deeper in the story, in the text. And that's one of the things that Common Core is having us do, is go deeper. So right now, I think this is the time where we give ourselves permission to focus on what is essential, to the one that you can go just focus on one, select the story that give you all the, just like a meal, give you all the nutrition, give the kids all the skills they need in order for them to maintain or to move forward. We don't have to do every single thing. And the few thing I put on there, it's just like, look at the complex, the text structure, because many times we read a story for understanding, for comprehension, but we don't go into the structure of the text. And sometimes we teach the kids like with looking at all the feature, the text feature, but yet to look deeper at of individual sentences, how the author write it. The other one, like I said, explain language feature, so that help them learn it, so they can, it's reflect in their writing. Many times when students write, we complain that they write simple sentences, they don't hang together. Well, this is the opportunity to analyze the text with them so that they can acquire those skills, and then it's transferred in their writing.
And in science, one of the things that, you know, is traditional is to kind of stay on a quick pace and to give the students experiments that are maybe out of a book or something where they just kind of follow the procedure, and kind of, they really anticipate what they're supposed to learn out of something. And really, you know, in NGSS focused science, it's really about that exploration. It's about giving them some phenomenon to let them think and kind of explore what they might understand about that concept first, and then let them kind of do some exploration and make sense of things and develop a model over time, so that never a time where, you know, sense making notebooks where students can write down their thoughts and watch their thoughts evolve over time. Just kind of like what Satinder was sharing with her math example, where, you know, kids get to show you what they're thinking. You know, so many of us think that science is getting the right answer, and or understanding something. And when you say something out loud, what you're thinking has to be right. And we've been spending many years telling kids the height of learning is getting something right. And I know that all of you are suffering the aftermath of that, where kids don't really want to show you what they understand about something in fear that they're going to be wrong, or they're going to look foolish or something in someone's eyes. So we have to kind of break that trend. So one of the things to think about as you move, and module 3 and some of these other modules really got into this, this idea of you know, learning over time and making sure that you're giving kids opportunity to share what they know and move forward in their thinking. I think that's really powerful in this next era of learning, and we need to give kids the ability to do that. So asynchronous time and synchronous time. Asynchronous time is maybe a good time to deliver content, and then when they're with you, your synchronous time is really for them to help explore and tell you where they're at. So again, we're back to that social emotional connection. If kids don't trust you or trust each other, they're not going to want to share an answer that potentially might be wrong. So it's important to go slow and to let the kids explore, and then let them share what they understand about something, and really work with you. So as you move into breakout rooms with your students, you can move in there in smaller groups. They have access to you. So that's, I think, one of the powerful parts of this distance learning is it's going to give kids opportunity to be with you closely. You know, maybe even more opportunities for that you might not anticipate. So I think that's another great aspect of our distance learning opportunities.
Yeah, the safe climate that Kirk is talking about is so very critical, and because they will not take risks to share their thinking. It's important for us to dig into their thinking, and that really gives us a good assessment. If you're trying to finish the unfinished learning, we need to know where they are, and the only way to get there is to have them reveal their thinking. And everybody needs to be non-judgmental wherever that comes, whatever comes up, and look at that as a perspective that's adding to everybody's learning. So moving on from the second principle, we are going to move, if we think that we're going to teach at the grade level and we want to go deeper in their understanding, then we want to make sure that we also prioritize the content. And this is a document that has recently come up. It's a priority instructional content, and is complementary to this whole addressing unfinished learning after COVID-19, specifically designed for that. This is from Achieve the Core. And it really is very useful for us to, for mathematics, it's only K-8, but for English language arts and literacy, it's K-12. And it gives us some, what do you prioritize? Like, when we all know that not every, we don't have to spend the same amount of time on every content in every classroom. Some content is just at the awareness level, and some content is we need to go deeper in. So knowing where to invest our time and effort and where to spend less time is going to be critical, especially at this time. And we also need to remember that not every underlying concept is really necessary for kids to understand the big topic. So we want to ask ourselves is, what is important at this time? What is really important from this topic? And pause that. And so we don't have to finish every page that's in the book. What is really important and what level of rigor is required for different parts of the standard. So those are, as we are designing our year, that is something that we need to, and this document would be extremely useful. By the way, we do have, Kirk is going to share, he just shared this document with you. So if you pull it up, you can, it's 100 some pages, but you don't have to go through with this, download that, put that on your desktop as you design your learning, you can do this. And what we are going to do, and you could probably look at this as we do the breakout session for you to scroll in and see if you can find other ways. So this is how we are going to do the breakout rooms. You will be assigned, and once you get to your breakout room, you will select a recorder, timekeeper, and reporter, and you'll have 9 minutes. And you're going to review the first 3 principles that we've just talked about. And discuss the strategies you have used to address those principles, or you think you can use going forward, and brainstorm with each other, and share those strategies. And the recorder will go and record that on the back channel Google Doc that you find in this link. And then be prepared to share few thoughts with us. We won't be calling on every recorder, but some of the recorders, if you would share, that would be really great, 2 or 3 of us. So are we ready, Kirk, for breakout?
We're ready. I'll send you.
Okay.
And they have a lot of fun.
All right, Satinder, are you ready?
Yeah, I just would like us to share 1 or 2 thoughts from the first 3. Any recorder would share with us just a couple of thoughts, 2 or 3 recorders. Unmute yourself and share, please.
I was a note taker for our group. We were group 10, and we discussed how we definitely need to prioritize subjects, especially like history, in order to gain deep depth. Since there's so much to cover, we need to prioritize what's most important. And then also prioritize material that was learned previously by reaching out to teachers to better understand subjects that they may have hit, so that way we're not diving as in depth to them if they already have a blanket understanding, and we're able just to kind of hit it and go and run with it. And then a great example that somebody gave in our group was that she actually made like a game, because she noticed that her students at the end of the year were kind of having a hard time with the science talks. They would lose focus. So she would like zoom out times 200 and be like, what do you think this might be? And slowly zoom in throughout the discussion to kind of keep their focus and keep them intrigued, which I thought was really neat.
Well, thank you, Emma, for sharing that. That's wonderful. Yeah, those are, you know, I'm glad that we are talking history, because that's not something we spent a lot of time in.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, I was a recorder in my group. I don't recall our group number. I apologize.
That's okay.
Some of the things that we did, for example, would be principle 1. One of the people in our group, she says that she revises what they've completed. So what they've completed the previous day to recheck for understanding. And then she gives them more smaller examples, and then watches them in their groups and utilizes different strategies at that time. And what was interesting, we had a music teacher who basically uses the standards, and the students are self-paced. and they're at 4 levels. So she actually created her own curriculum, and that's what she uses. And because they're self-paced, each student is going to be at a different part of the lesson, of the level. And then another was, but for priority 3, a lot of us basically used the standards and the assessments to do to prioritize our content. I myself shared that I hate teaching to tests. So I mean, I'm guilty of looking at that. However, I also try to engage in a more wider view and look at the whole unit, because there are some things in the tests in the testing that doesn't touch, that if we're doing base, it's not going to show you. For Wonders in our curriculum, they have us do base, and then they have the other. So I always go to the other. I do everything. And I try to do a little bit of everything. So especially writing, very important.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
And we'll have one more quick share, and then we'll move on to the next 3 principles.
Hi, I'm Ranveer, and we were in group 22. It was interesting to hear from high school science they do focus on step and hop, which helps them in depth has been a trouble or a struggle, because they need to focus on skills rather than asking their students to finish and move on. So there was a good term they used, that they check the temperature by Friday if they need to repeat the class or the topic, or they need to move on. And it is depending on the standard-based grading or group standards. So they try to check the temperature before they decide if they need to move on, or they need to stress or focus on certain parts of that standard.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, all 3 of you sharing that. So moving on to the next 3 principles. And before we do that, here is an example. There's just a quotation that we would like us to ponder briefly. I think I thought I got out of the, let me just go to the viewing of the presentation. So what we want to do is while all the students have been affected by what's really happening, some students are affected more by what's really happening than the others, because we know that EL learners, students with disabilities, foster youth, homeless, and our temptation might be to pull these students out and provide some remediation. And that's not the way to do. And that is obviously is going to, providing that remedial work is going to create even more inequities for that. And what do we need to do instead? So, and not only more inequities, but it's also very discouraging for these kids who are, like they've lost for 3 months. And then all of a sudden they're, provided more remedial work. And that's never fun, remedial work. And how do we do that? And its inclusion is one strong predictor of academic growth for kids with special learning. I just have the synthesis of the version. Sorry about that. Because I can't see you on here. So I was trying to do the presentation. And so when that happens, it just kicks me out of this. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm just gonna go back here, ensuring. So how do we, asset-based learning, when we look at asset-based learning, when you think of EL learners, they bring in this perspective of 2 languages, like they do know 2 or 3 languages, right? So that is always an added dimension to a learner. So how do we look at that as an asset and rather than a liability? EL learners bring in really this additional language. It's better to know 2 languages than only 1. So we want to start looking at EL learners from that lens. And the other thing is EL learners also bring in different cultural background. So anytime we have learners with different cultural backgrounds, it adds the richness to your class in ways that doesn't if it's just one culture. So that's something that we want to look at as that they are multi-competence in EL learners. And even kids with disabilities, they may have some things that might not work well for them, but they have so many other strengths that we need to kind of capitalize on. How do we find those strengths and pull those out? There's UDL principles that are available to us. And if you, I know many of you probably are aware, it's a universally designed learning. So in it, every learner has access. The idea is to provide instruction in ways that is accessible to all different learners. And it's not, and there's iconic, we do have UDL, by the way, here, trainings that we might eventually, once we are out of these modules, we will be providing more of the UDL. But this is iconic picture that I know many of you probably seen that we used to call.
You're not sharing your screen.
I'm not sharing the screen? Oh, you guys didn't see that in the previous one? Okay. Oh, sorry about
That's
that.
because we are pretty smart. We can do it without seeing it. Fine.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything since we came back from the breakout rooms.
Oh,
Sorry,
thank
we
you.
should have.
Can you see
We
it
know
now?
you're all happy with us. So we said, okay, we like to see each other.
Now we can see it. Now
Can you
we
see
see
now?
it.
Okay, good. I don't know what
Yes.
else. Sorry, I'm glad somebody spoke up here. So this was the screen that you guys missed. I'm going to give you a moment to look at. So multi-competence that we were talking about learners and UDL principles. So those are some things that we want to make sure that how do we ensure that all learners are included? And if those of you who would want to dig deeper into UDL principles, I'm sure we will have some professional learning here at San Joaquin County that we'll be offering as we move forward after these modules are done. So this is the iconic image that I was talking to you about. And typically we see equality, and you can see where that is. Equity, kids are still there. Reality is that, but truly we want to liberate our students from all the shackles of that some learnings can cause. So that is inclusion. And the next one we are going to look at is, I'm going to have you briefly look at it before we dig deeper into this. One other point I want to make in terms of the inclusion is that rethink the approach to the family engagement, because in the past, our family engagement has been at the stakeholder level. So how do we make them partners with us as we move forward in this? And so that is something that we want to make sure that our parents are critical partners in this. So this is where, when we think of standardized testing, there's standardized testing and we put them in groups. That's what we are talking about here, that those are not something that are going to serve our children well at this point. We do want to give them time to reacclimate to the situation we are in before we do any type of testing, standardized testing. So better yet, it might be good for us to give them some meaningful assessment. When I say meaningful assessment, an example is that in mathematics, it's not the worksheet with 20 people or 20 problems. It's not the time test. That's a meaningful assessment. Meaningful assessment is to do number talks and capitalizing on kids' different ways of seeing things and building their understanding from there. and noticing what might be lacking. Let's say if a child is counting on their fingers and not making tens, not making chunks, that means there I need to provide instruction in that area. And we want to respond in real time in the context of the grade level, noticing what's really happening as the discussions are happening, as the discourse is happening, distance learning or real, and then bring in whatever is needed. And we want to use exit tickets, student work, student discussion to assess and drive instruction, not the standardized test. Give it to them because it tells us worksheet, a big worksheet, a problem, a time test on a page doesn't tell us much about a child, and it can misplace a child. So we do want to create physically. The other thing these standardized tests do is cause a lot of anxiety for our learners. So physically and psychologically, they need to feel safe. We need to create learning communities where they can experience joy of learning. That's really important. How do we have kids experience joy of learning? Like somebody was saying in our earlier in the chat box, what gives them joy is the learning, and that gives them joy. So how do we create that for our learners? And it is only through grade level instruction that we can create, we can address these gaps. So moving on to our last one. So these are some of the assessment tools. Some of you may use them already. And if you don't, these might be some for you to explore. Go formative. If you want to check each child's individually, that's a great tool. CISA might be something that you can do each child, but they can also look at everyone else's work and refine their work and do the next version. So they learn from each other. Jamboard, a quick example that you saw earlier with the Apple Talk, that was Jamboard. Padlet is another one. Open-ended prompts or tasks are really important rather than very closed tasks. Like Kirk was saying earlier, the tasks that are more of the procedural, those are not going to tell us much. Classroom discussions, discourse, and tools from your own learning management skill might be important for us to capitalize on. So those may be, these are just some of them. There may be some additional tools. And last practice is capitalizing on the common experiences that we all are experiencing at this time, because kids have experienced prolonged interruption in their learning. So that has caused greater adverse effect for some children than the others. Some children are living in these transitional living spaces. There are low-income kids that might have some, that we know have other challenges. Abuse, domestic violence has gone up in some communities, parental job loss, all of those things are happening in our kids' life, and in our own life might be happening to some degree. And how do we recognize that? All of that has to be recognized because it is important for our emotional well-being. But then we need to re-engage in the academic content that's happening to all of us. So whatever the differences may be in our experiences, the crisis point should be a starting point for our learners. COVID-19 gives us a wonderful opportunity for us to focus on science teaching, the graph, what's really happening in the scientific data, in human body, health practices, prevention of diseases, maintaining good health, all of those and tons more. It's a great opportunity for us to know why science is so important at this point. And the other issue that we all are experiencing is social justice protests that are happening. Great opportunity for history, for us kids to kind of learn in this moment what's really happening. How are our systems so inequitable? How were these inequities created? And how can we moving forward? And the sole purpose of education is actually for us to become, for our learners to become change agents for positive. So how do we, and then this is why the practices that we were talking earlier, where we are developing kids agencies, kids are creating and co-creating, and we are valuing what they have to say. The purpose of that is to help them feel empowered, because we can't do direct instruction all year till they're 22, but all of a sudden 22, we say, turn on the light bulb and then now you become change agent. Go solve the world problems. So this needs to happen starting in kindergarten, that how do we make sure that we provide that those opportunities for them to grow as individuals and build their own confidence, agency, and empowerment. And this is a perfect time for us to develop that in our learners. And so we're going to do second breakout room for 9 minutes, the same thing. Now we're going to focus on the next three that we just talked about. So Kirk. Sorry, I was unmuted. Would one group share with us, just because we are looking at the time, we only have 10 minutes. If one group could share, one person could share with us what their takeaway was from that breakout session.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I just noticed I'm reading this. I didn't read this entire slide here, and I'm supposed to be, I guess, putting the notes in this Google slide, which I haven't done. I did take notes. So anyway, were we supposed to answer ensure inclusion of each and every learner? We were supposed to focus on principle 4?
4, 5, 6 is what we were thinking.
All of them. Okay, so one of them that I found was interesting, that one of our team shared with, was they developed an alliance at their school for social justice on Zoom, and they meet and they share and they talk about the environment and how to take that information and find lessons because of the distance learning. Mm-hmm. And the difference in being in the classroom. Mm-hmm. They would try to find lessons that they can cross curricular, so that this way they're teaching math with science and comprehension with science. Mm-hmm. So they developed an alliance for that, and so I'll share that, and I'll finish with that, because I know, as you mentioned, you're short of time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Veronica.
You're welcome.
It's wonderful when you think of data and science. Amber, in my group, we were talking about how this is perfect opportunity for us to kind of make sense of data, and in combination with science. So, and then the areas too. Social justice, I mean, that's really just so timely for us to kind of capitalize upon. So we're looking back to the 6 principles. So we would like you to briefly look at these 3 considerations as we move forward to opening the school with our kids. To wrap it up, so 3 pointers are all about the content and academics. One thing that we do not want to forget, obviously, everything happens with the foundation of our SEL. Somebody mentioned social emotional learning. And the visual that we found here is just so interesting. I just thought it's almost we have to descend from our head to our heart at a time like this. And we do everything that we do with our students, we do it with our heart, open heart. And we open that up for ourselves, and we open that up for our learners. So that is something that we want to keep in mind as we move forward, and not really get into this rush to to superficially do things and move forward. So those are considerations. We do have some resources there, and we will upload all of that. The priority content is there, principles are there, there's a PDF there, so all of that will be posted, and we'll share that with you. Reflection. We started off with what's the first thing that popped in your head when you thought, and then it was just flying by. It's frustration. And now we kind of looked at the principles of unfinished learning and strategies for unfinished learning. And visiting back here, We need to meet where the learners are. So, and we've shared quite a few things that can help us meet the learner where we are. So think about that. What is one takeaway you have? And put that in the chat box for all of us to see, because you know some things just fly by us as we're going through this. So as we can all look at the chat box, we could say, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of it. Let me see, you know, that's my takeaway too. So if you could quickly put that in the chat box, that would really, so everybody can see what your takeaway is and learn from it. I'll give you a moment. Less assessment, more connection, universally designed learning. This is not going to be easy, but together we can do it. Choose critical connections, digging deep, commonalities, stick to the grade level standards, focus connections, relationships, naturally, designing authentic assessments, relationships again. Less connections and content, slowing down to be able to move forward. If it all fails, Google it, going slower and into the detail. Make connections and build relationships. Focus on depth and not on pace. Families, making connections with the families. Slow down. Assess as needed based on the grade level standards. Individualize learning and find ways for students to show what they know besides standardized tasks, prioritizing content. Don't focus on trying to cover everything at once. Build connections and trust with the kids first. Great job, great. Yes, I think you wrapped it up really nicely, Zara. All of these comments are really kind of sharing. It's wonderful. Exit tickets, utilizing discussions, student work to assess student understanding, focus on depth, not on pace. Utilize various instructional tools to keep students engaged. Oh, okay, Joe, have students use the learning, extend, and review, rewind previous learning into current grade content. Wonderful. It seems like walking away, we have quite a few things that we can focus on. And Kirk, do you want to share with us where this will be posted so they can access it?
What did you say, Satinder? I was talking about I was linking the form here. So we have a Google form for you to fill out. I'm also going to send you the link to all these recorded modules that you can get access to all of the videos for modules 1 through 5. And also, in addition to that, all the resources in the back channels for each of these are in a separate tab. And they're going live. We're replacing a few of the videos, but we're putting up what we have so far. So you will see all these. You can go back to these at your leisure and rewatch pieces of them if you forgot something, or get access to the resources. So this is on a Google site. You should be able to see those. Let me see here. Make sure you get the Google site. So here's the Google site right there again. Very helpful. So we would really appreciate it if you complete the evaluation. And if you need anything else, the three of us, the directors of content areas, we can certainly follow up with that. And then the authors of this session are many, and we continue to iterate these sessions and provide changes. So as these evolve, as we continue to give these sessions, not only here, but we're also giving these sessions to districts as well. And so we might, hopefully we'll get a chance to see you all in person, or at least in a more, multiple times this year. We're looking forward to helping you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us for more if you have detailed questions. Remember, each module has a different focus. So, it's important to go back, and if you haven't seen those other modules, I highly recommend you look at those modules. They're really wonderful, and they're just 1 hour long, so they're not in any depth, but they have really a large amount of resources. In particular, especially all the tools. A lot of the folks that come to these are really focusing on tool use, and there is tremendous amount of webinars and things that we have around tool use. So I know in the lesson examples on module 2 and 3 both have a lot of stuff around tools. The reason we don't focus a lot on tools during these sessions is because each district has a different set of tools that they advocate and that they allow their students to use and their teachers to learn. So that's one of the reasons why we don't go into a lot of depth on particular tools on these sessions. So
we also have a question here. How can I send proof to my district that I participated?
So what will happen is that when we're done here, another person in another group, Jane Steinkamp's assistant, will download the actual export the list that was participating, and they will send that to every school district in the region. If you particularly need that, let us know. We'll forward your email on to Jess Clements from Ed Services, and she will forward that to whoever you need it for. If you're from another district or another region, we're happy to do that. All the districts in San Joaquin County will receive that from us for sure.
And Teresa, we will be, all the information will be, Padlet will be on there, the link that we send you.
Kurt, could you please post the evaluation again, the Google form for the evaluation again, please? Somebody will ask.
How about if I do the other ones on my own time? That is something that with your district. Yes, talk to them.
There's the link there.
Thank you, Mary, for putting our names there. Great. It's usually we just kind of tear it. And Kirk has put up I think Lisa was asking for the feedback form. It's right here.
Yeah, we got the feedback form up. Kirk just put it.
Well, thank you all. It's a little bit past our time. We do have to get off of this because we have to render the video and get ready for our next presentation. So we hope you all have a good start of your year, and good luck, and thank you for participating.